Welcome to part 2 of my video series on my Washington State vacation in 2009. Mom and Dad and I all met in Seattle, and as you saw in video number 1, we toured the city a little bit, and then we went to Mount St. Helens, and we left off with Mount St. Helens. Now it's time to talk about Mount Rainier, Whidbey Island, the Olympic Peninsula, and we finish off with Victoria, British Columbia. So when we got to the visitor center at Mount Rainier, we asked the park ranger at the desk, where should we go for a hike? And the park ranger said, hey, this is great, I've got just the trail for you, take about 3 hours, and it's one of the trails that has the least amount of snow on it. So Mom and Dad and I are thinking, yeah, this sounds like something we want to do. And just like at Mount St. Helens, there were beautiful wildflowers everywhere, wonderful views of the Tatoosh Range, which is a group of mountains just to the south of Mount Rainier. We even got to see this alpine marmot who posed for us on the rock, kind of cute. But once we ascended, say 500 feet higher than the nature center, we did get to start trudging through a whole bunch of snow, which didn't bother us, we had to be really careful. And here you can see this view of Mount Rainier in its full majesty and glory and beautiful blue sky, just panoramic views of the mountain. Now in this photo you see Mom and Dad there, but you don't get any sense of scale, how big this mountain is. We were miles from the peak of this mountain. We were at an elevation of about 6,800 feet. The mountain itself is 14,000 feet, so we didn't even get close to climbing this mountain. There were some people who got close though, and as you zoom in on a portion of this photograph, I want to point out some climbers that are on this mountain. They're using their ice picks and they're trudging along the Nisqually Glacier. They're just specks, and that shows you how huge this mountain is. Well, we did get to Panorama Point, which is at 6,800 feet in elevation. We started out at 5,400 feet, so we did do some climbing there. And at the top we got people, we got a raven that would be interested in any food that those people might have been providing. And then we hiked back down. It was getting a little bit late in the day and we were very tired. Here is the Paradise Inn. This is where we stayed for a couple nights within the national park. And the dining room, which reminds me a lot about Harry Potter's dining area. And here's the lobby. We enjoyed our time there. And this is my absolute most favorite picture, believe it or not, of my entire trip to Washington State. Nothing dramatic here except for the golden sunlight of dusk, just highlighting those tree trunks. Well, after about 2.5 days at Mount Rainier, which wasn't nearly long enough, we got back into our rental car and we drove through Seattle all the way back up towards Everett, and we hopped on another ferry, and I love ferries. Took some pictures, and we got to Whidbey Island. We stayed at a bed and breakfast at Whidbey Island, which was recommended to us by my uncle who had stayed there once before. The town where we were staying was pretty small, but it had a choice of restaurants, and I didn't take too many pictures, although here's some pictures from a nature hike we took. But I didn't take too many pictures at Whidbey Island because we kind of had a bad day there. We had to do some laundry, which would make the day bad in my opinion anyway, but while we were doing laundry, the three of us were there at the laundromat, and we failed to detect a person who came in and stole my mother's backpack. The backpack didn't have anything particularly valuable in it, but it was certainly a violation of our property and our innocence. So we weren't feeling so good about that island or that day of our vacation.
Were we expecting a visit from the Tooth Fairy?
This boat was just showing us some sights. One of the sights was peregrine falcon nest on one side of Deception Pass, and on the other side of Deception Pass we saw a bald eagle nest, so lots of birds, seabirds as well. And then if you look real closely in this footage, there is a porpoise. That's if you try real hard. I wasn't able to get a real close shot. Here's the bridge that spans from the island to the mainland. It's the very, very tall bridge, and we had fun going underneath it. Okay, one more ferry from Whidbey Island over to the Olympic Peninsula of Washington. And we landed in Port Townsend, spent the night in a motel, and then went to the Olympic National Park. So when we got to Olympic National Park, we decided to go to a place that was suggested to us by my friend Grant, who actually used to live on the Olympic Peninsula. And he told us about a place that none of the tourists ever go to. It's a gorgeous place with lots of views, and it's undisturbed and peaceful. So this sounded wonderful, and we took him up on the advice. We went to a place called a deer park. Now what Grant didn't tell us about was that the road up Deer Park was a single-lane dirt road that hugged the mountain. And it was honestly one of the scariest roads that me and my parents have ever been on, just because it was so narrow and steep. And then when we got up there, we were in the clouds, and there was no view, no reward for grabbing hold of the dashboard all the way up there. Lots of nice wildflowers though, and here's some lichen on a rock. There was a campsite nearby, and there were people about. Very brave people, I would say. Well, given that we didn't really see any views from Deer Park, we decided to go to that more touristy spot in Olympic National Park called Hurricane Ridge. And we were rewarded with the views. The clouds had either moved on or they weren't in that particular spot. Here's some Olympic deer, and you might be impressed at how close we can get, and I should, as a wildlife biologist, say, oh yeah, it's me and the animals. We get together real well, but how should I say this? I've muted the sound so that you can't hear all of the other people that are remarking about the deer, because it's not just me and the deer, it's me and 24 other people all watching the deer.